Welcome in, college football fans. It's that time again. That's right, baby. It's time for the First and Long College Football Show. If you are a diehard college football fan, welcome home, everybody. This is where you need to be. Hit that subscribe button. Please hit the like button. That helps us out a ton. We're trying to get the word out about this awesome show. We at least think it's awesome. We hope you do too. We have a lot of fun doing it, and just a couple of diehard college football fans here talking some college football, chopping it up. Mason, how are you on this fourth day of April? We missed last week. I think it was a good week for us to take a little break. Are you rested up and ready to power through what's going to be a very eventful April in college football?
Yeah, no doubt. We've got spring practice for the bulk of the teams, at least in the SEC, happening next week. The week after that, the rest of the SEC will be done. Missouri was finished a month ago, weirdly, but yeah, we got plenty to talk about heading into the spring game for all these teams, and then of course after the spring game, we'll have even more information to talk about, and then we're going to open up that portal window again, right? And we're going to have it's going to be chaos. By all accounts,
that's what they're saying.
There will be pandemonium across the transfer portal, which we've seen before, but we'll be ready to chop it up, man. I'm excited for it from a talking head perspective, not so much from the headache that it gives my team, the Georgia Bulldogs, more than likely.
Yeah, that's I feel like that's my fear. That's my fear. As a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I'm like, all right, which one of these guys that I'm in love with the prospect of playing at the University of Georgia is going to be saying, all right, I'm hitting the road, Jack, and I'm going to get some Jack. And man, I hate it. I hate it. It sucks. But hey, the portal giveth and it taketh away. Okay. And that's the era that we're in. And if you spend time crying about it, certainly as a coach, us fans, we can cry about it all we want to. And that's what we're here to do on this show. So put it in the comment section. We'll cry with you. But as coaches, if you sit around and you think about it and cry about it, you're just going to get left behind. If you ain't moving forward, you're getting left behind. But we have an awesome show for you guys today. Again, if you'll hit that like button, that'll help us out a ton. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? You need to be subscribed to the First and Long Show because it's just the right thing to do and do right by me and Mason and help us out in that regard. We got new rules in college football, and I feel like everybody talked about this stuff a couple of months ago, and then I feel like we haven't revisited it just because of the fact that transfer portal and everything has been just crazy and out of control. But we've got 3 new rules that are going to be voted on April 18th. We're going to go over those today and talk about whether those are good or bad for us college football fans in the sport. And would love to hear all you fans, college football fans, what your take is on that. We've got odds to make and miss the college football playoff. I think this is pretty cool. You've got an opportunity this year to bet on a team to make the playoff or bet on a team to miss the playoff. And I think that's a really neat wager that you can make before the kickoff there, August 31st. Top freshmen making noise in spring ball and the names that you need to know as far as the freshmen coming in from high school for the 2024 season. We're going to talk about that. And then we've got our schedule previews. We've pretty much done every team in the SEC. If we missed the team in the SEC that you're a fan of somehow, I think there was only a couple that we may have missed. Please let us know in the comment section. We'd love to get that done for you. But we've got the Penn State Nittany Lions up today and the Oregon Ducks. So very excited to get into the Big Ten as we talk about the schedule previews coming up for 2024, which is coming up very, very, very quickly. But let's jump into the new rules in college football, which includes helmet communications. And all this, as I said at the top of the show, is going to be voted on April 18th. If you're watching this clip later, we hope that you hit the like button and subscribe. We're chopping it up college football style every day, just about. So here's what we got going on, Mason. We've got in-helmet mics that are everybody's testing it out this spring. Lots of coaches have talked about it. We'll kind of get into what some of the coaches have said about these mics. We had a few teams use these experimentally in bowl games last year, and we're absolutely in love with the prospect of being able to use that on a permanent basis. So we'll kind of get into that, but let's talk about the rules. So one player on the field at a time may have a headset, and there will be a coach on the other end of that that's able to coach them up until 15 seconds on the play clock. Okay, so when 15 seconds or less, or whenever you hit 15 seconds on the play clock, mic shuts off. No more communications. Player must be identified on the helmet, on the back of the helmet with a green sticker, so you're going to be able to see that on TV who's got the mic. And I'm thinking that this is going to turn into certain positions are going to have it the majority of the time, but I'm sure some people will have different signal callers on the defense and things. I think that'll be interesting. And another rule that's being proposed is a 2-minute warning. Okay. We'll talk about that. That's kind of a rule that I've got a little bit more of a beef with. I'm not a huge fan of this 2-minute warning thing. And we had one more rule that is slipping my mind, and I'm going to pull that up real quick. It was something. Oh, it was the tablets on the sidelines, right? And in the locker room at halftime. So, what are your thoughts on all this stuff? What do you think's good for this sport? I personally, I don't mind the helmet mics. I don't really mind the screens. You know, that's more like the NFL. You see the guys on the sideline. We've all seen Tom Brady throw the tablet, right? You know, they all got their tablets on the sidelines. They're watching plays. I think all that stuff's pretty good for football, but I think anytime you make a rule like this, there's probably going to be some kind of unintended consequences. So, how do we feel this is going to change college football in general?
Yeah, with the 2-minute timeout, I think we'll kind of chop that one up a little bit first. I don't know that it's necessarily a good thing because of what we talked about off the air, where this is really to benefit the TV executives and the whatever TV channel is broadcasting the game. This is to give them an extra timeout to show commercials, and then on top of that, you know, you're going to have additional timeouts in those 2 minutes for whenever there's a first down gained and things like that, just like in the NFL. So there's a lot more time in those last 2 minutes than there were just last year, where we were trying to condense the game. So you know, it seems like that, and college football has become, you know, don't fool yourselves, it's become a money driven sport. This is driven by the media. This is driven by the TV executives, and why wouldn't they also have an impact on the rules, right? At this point, so it's what the NFL does. Look, they do it. They're the best, you know, professional sport program in the world, professional sport association in the world, for a reason, because they know how to make money, and you know that's ultimately what this will do. But it's also another case that it's another case of the NFL, or excuse me, the NCAA becoming like the NFL and providing more opportunity for those people in the industry with the money that's involved, but you're disregarding the consumer, the actual, you know, people like us, the fans who are viewing the sport, and you know, giving them all the money, all the ratings. So I don't know that it's necessarily a good thing. I'm kind of on the same page with you. I think that this will this won't affect the game so much that you're saying, "Oh gosh, these 2-minute warnings right at the end of a game." You're not going to notice it necessarily, but you know, here in April, I can say it's probably unnecessary.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally 100% agree with you. It's the sport has been so commercialized over the last few years, and I know it's a horse that we've beaten after it's dead. The sport has just changed. It has changed a lot. last year we wanted to shorten the games. We wanted to make the game experience more consumable for really, honestly, the casual fan, and not the the fanatic, like somebody who would watch this show. Um, it's not meant to benefit that person anymore. It's about more eyes on the game, and if they felt like if they could make the game shorter, that it would be more easier to consume in one sit down for a casual fan. And me, I'm not a casual fan, and I know that you're not, Mason, and that's why we did this show, because it's like, well, we're diving so deep on this stuff anyway. We want to talk about it with other people. So naturally, something like that, a move to for the casual fan doesn't appeal to somebody like us. Is it good for the sport that it gets more eyes on the sport? If it works, I guess. But I don't necessarily know that this translates to getting even more eyes on the sport. So there was some kind of rules official that made a comment on this about a month ago, and said that this is going to help the game, and this is going to synchronize blah 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 blah. And it's a bunch of damn hogwash, man. It's a bunch of, I mean, of course, somebody like that, somebody who stands to benefit from more commercials, is going to say that. So, look, we get it. College football, the movers and shakers, we get it. You're speaking with your actions louder than you are with your words. You want less football, but more money, more commercials, and college football fans like me. I'll be having multiple TVs set up, so hopefully you guys can't synchronize all your commercials at the same time, and I've got college football on no matter what. So with the 2-minute warning, I don't like it. I think it's why are we doing this? They're like, well, it's more like the NFL. What? This isn't preparing anybody for the NFL or something. All the excuses are just crazy. Don't get it twisted, folks. It's more money in more people's pockets, and if that's what it takes to keep the college football lights on, then I guess as a college football fan, I just have to be okay with that.
If the objective was to make college football more like the NFL, then you would see other rule changes, like in order for a catch to be a catch, you have to have 2 feet in bounds, right?
Yeah.
So let's not fool ourselves into thinking that that's the objective, because we would see it. It's not too hard to copy and paste the NFL's rules and follow that. So it's not about that.
No, it's not. It's about the money. Now, let's talk about the helmet mic thing, because during the bowl games this past bowl season, there was several teams, and I can't remember exactly which ones it was, but I read about a few of them, and I know one of them was Maryland, and Mike Loxley was talking about how it was more like playing a video game than anything else. Now, you got to remember something. When Maryland used it in the bowl game, there was no 15-second cutoff on the play clock. They had it all the way up until the snap of the ball. So they're literally yelling in their quarterback's ear as the play clock's coming down to 2, go here, go there, literally like pressing a button on a video game. And so I think that's kind of what he meant. And they were in love with it. They thought that it was really, really good. And naturally, being a team in the Big Ten, Mike Loxley had to, throw Michigan under the bus a little bit, and say, well, this is great because this is going to eliminate people like that from being able to do something like they did. And
well, you better never lose to Michigan again, right?
Yeah, right. I know, right? And ironically, Maryland actually played Michigan one of the pretty well last year. So I don't think I don't think that's the way that game went last year. I don't believe that's how Michigan wanted it to go. If they had some kind of ace up their sleeve, I think they would have pulled it out in that game, because it was a little close for comfort. Honestly, that was a good game. I remember watching. If Tagovailoa doesn't fumble twice and give the ball away, Maryland may win that game. But with all that being said, they didn't, and Michigan won the national championship, so that's great. But I don't know who I'm flattering. Michigan fans aren't watching this, but nonetheless, I think this is good. I think this is good for college football because why not use this technology? I am a proponent for technology being used to take more of human aspect out of silly things like calling in signals and even like you know refing the game, umpiring the game. I want sensors on the balls. I'm that guy that's saying, why don't we have sensors all around this football that tell us exactly where it's at on this football field? Like I can walk around with my phone and use it like a GPS, so I don't understand why that football can't have a chip in it and tell us, what yard line it's on exactly. That type of stuff. So I'm a proponent for this stuff. Now, I think one thing that kind of contradicts what Mike Locksley was saying, the head coach at Maryland, Kirby Smart was quoted on this because Kirby is a member of the rules team and has been for 3 or 4 years now, and he brought up an interesting point. I thought so. He says that you're never going to be able to stop with the signs unless every coach on the sideline has a headset.
Yeah.
And it does make sense because you've got different position coaches that are in charge of getting their position ready for, whatever set that the defense or offense is in. They don't all have headsets on. So they're looking at the signals just like the players are in some of these instances. So you're still going to be having signs. Now, does that mean that I think we shouldn't have mics and helmets? No. Like I said, I'm a proponent. So don't get me wrong here, but I'm just saying I don't know that this is some kind of silver magic bullet that's going to correct what we saw last year, which you can call it gamesmanship. You can call it ethically questionable what Michigan did. I think it's definitely somewhere in a gray area. There was rules that were broken. So I think this helps with that situation some, but it's not an end all be all to fix this issue, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like you mentioned, each position group has its own set of plays that are going to be called. So ultimately, you're still going to be trying as a competitor, you still want to try to implement the in-game strategies that you've already had, that you've developed on your team and on your coaching staff to you're still going to want to implement those and try to steal the other team's signs in game. And obviously that wasn't the issue with Michigan last year. They were doing it when they weren't playing, and that's the biggest difference there. Ultimately, I think this will benefit both sides of the football. I'm anxious to see kind of who has the upper hand. If is it going to be offense? Is it going to be defense?
Yeah.
That's something that Lane Kiffin had brought up, and he was like, well, I'd love it if just the offense had it, but he actually was the only coach in the SEC that voted against it because he said, yeah, it would help. And you would think that, Lane Kiffin would want that, because of how he likes to run the offense. Right. But he said, yeah, it would certainly help me, but I don't want the defensive coordinator to know what I'm doing. He basically said, without saying it, that I have confidence in my team and my players' ability to execute the play that's called and know how to call out of it and how to check down. I don't want the defense to have, the defense coordinator to see what's going on the field and be in the ear of the middle linebacker and being able to tell him exactly what he's seeing, because he trusted that his team would execute it well, better than the defense would without having a coach in their ear. So it's interesting when you hear that perspective. You would think that it would benefit the offense more, but then you hear that and it's kind of like, well, yeah, if you're checking down and the defense is able to see what you're doing from above or from a tablet, then they may have a counter to that actually helps them out. But have you gone down that hole at all? Do you have an idea of who you think it would benefit more, which side of the ball?
I don't think we know yet, but I mean, I am super interested in that exact thing, and that's kind of the whole what I was trying to get to with this topic today, because it seems like you would be able to go like almost like no huddle anytime you wanted, like really fast. I don't know. It just seems like those fast paced teams that it would help a lot because they're never snapping the ball with less than 15 seconds on the play clock. So therefore, pre-play, their mic is turned on the whole time right up to the snap of the ball.
Yeah.
Teams like Georgia, like the Georgia Bulldogs and Ohio State, of course, every team will go hurry up like last 2 minutes, and I guess it'll probably be after a 2-minute warning because that crap will probably be voted in on the 18th. But these teams are more deliberate. They're not typically snapping the ball with 15 seconds left on the play clock. So I'm interested to see if it slows play down a little bit, and I'm interested to see if the offense gets to the line, waits, because like you're saying, Lane Kiffin, what if they get to the line, wait till 15 seconds is on the play clock, and then make their move real quick, and the defense doesn't have something in their ear. You know what I'm saying? Lane Kiffin still has that advantage the last 15 seconds of the play clock,
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see, does it make offenses go slower?
Yeah.
Or
Do you just kind of fill in, that time with some different looks, and then you say, all right before 15 seconds, you're going to switch to this play and then we're going to run,
like a choreographed audible.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. A planned check down, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And for those of you who know who watch the NFL more than we do, maybe how it affected the NFL when they started going to mics in the helmets. That's probably a good template to follow. But I don't remember that as far as I don't know. I don't remember when that happened. Honestly, I don't know what year that was actually implemented in the NFL. But that'd be interesting to look into.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see, does this help a team like a Georgia Bulldogs team more, or does it help like a team like Illinois more?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like having that coach in your ear, who is that helping more? The guy who's probably going to the NFL and probably already has a pretty good idea of what's going on the field, or does it the more mediocre player, that maybe isn't quite on that level of that other guy that's playing for that top school? I'm wondering if there's even if it helps a more talented team less than it helps a less talented team,
Well, and I think about personnel and the coaching personnel. So teams like Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, they all have massive coaching personnel. They just have a bigger coaching roster. And so now with the tablets, I think it's 16 tablets that are allowed to be used per team per game. So you've got 16 tablets that can be used. So the offensive coordinator really doesn't need to sit up in the box anymore for a lot of these. So now you've got an extra person that can be down on the field. Offensive coordinator can be face to face with his quarterback, with his receivers, getting everybody huddled up together, on the same page. You can send the GA up in the box and say, here's what I'm seeing, or an analyst, offensive analyst, whoever that is, they can sit up there and be in the offensive coordinator's ear directly. And offensive coordinator can say, hey, what do you see up there? What am I looking at? And then you're also going to have that view on your tablet. So afterwards, you're going to see kind of what they're doing. That's just another piece to this whole technology package is the use of the tablets, and how does that affect the coaching personnel and where people sit and where they're at. There's a certain strategy that I think certain teams are going to have to figure out, and this first year I think is going to be an adjustment. Coaching staffs may not get it right games 1, 2, and 3. Once they get that tough game, they may say, well, we didn't really like that. We didn't like this, doing it this way, So
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be interesting, if nothing else. I don't know, good or bad. I don't know. I'm usually pro technology in all aspects of life. So I think that ultimately that part I don't have as much of a problem with as I do the 2-minute warning.
Well, I think we could go on and on and on and speculate what this could do for an offense or for a defense. Does it help the offense more or the defense? We're going to not have answers to these questions as the season goes on. And this is not the last time that we'll be talking about this. This vote goes on April 18th. We will revisit it then and probably have some more formulated thoughts. But if you have already thought this through and you've got all the answers, which most people that comment on YouTube have already done all the research and are 100% accurate 100% of the time, I'd love to hear that, and I'd like to be educated. So if you could, please do me the pleasure of doing that. Thank you all so much for watching. All you folks over there on X, thank you so much. We certainly do appreciate it. I saw your little thumbs up popping up on the screen as the show's going on. And wherever you get the show,
Apparently, that's how you do it. You got to actually gesture thumbs up.
You literally, did you make that just happen?
I think so. Yeah, look at that. We're figuring things out on the fly.
Are you serious?
Because I noticed whenever I put my hand up, it did it.
No, dude. I think two people. What?
Either that or somebody's messing with us. And they're liking it every time we do that. But
welcome to the live show, everybody. This is all right. So we do a live show once a week, and this is the best show to watch if you're asking me. Some people like the live show, but we cut all these clips up and we put them out throughout the next week, and so in between these segments, we kind of goof around and stuff. If you got a comment and you got questions or something you want to talk about, or you want to educate us, put it in the comment section and we'll read it right now live on the show. Thank you all again for watching, and we certainly do appreciate it. So, Mason, we have got a new preseason bet that we can all take part in, as long as you're in a state that's legal to bet or you have some type of bookie situation. And these are fun to look at, even if you're not betting on college football. But the odds to make and miss the college football playoff, I think this is just really, really interesting stuff. And the way that Vegas has set some of these up, and I'm thinking of one in particular that we're going to get to here in just a few minutes, I think it tells you a lot about where these teams are at. And look, we all know how Vegas is, man. They're sharks with this stuff. I mean, they are unbelievably accurate with this stuff. And but there is money to be made. Okay, don't make no mistake about it. We had a decent little year last year. Really came on at the end of the year with our betting show. That's called Between the Lines, and that's on Fridays. We'll bring that back when the season gets close. We'll bring that back probably that last week of August, right? But I just think that this stuff is super interesting. I mean, to bet against a team to make the college football playoff, I mean, that's a lot of fun. And I feel like you're going to have tons of rivals of teams being like, $100 says they don't make the playoffs, dude.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's really, really fun and maybe drains people's bank accounts. I don't know, but I haven't bet on any of these yet, and I do actually plan on putting a little something on a couple of these, so hopefully you guys can help me decide. We hope that in the comment section you'll comment who you're taking to make, or tell us who you're saying there's no chance in hell they're making the playoff. Go ahead and squash your mortal enemies and your rivals in the comment section as you please. Thank you. Let's put these odds up here. Mason, is that the frame we want to be in? There we go.
Did you?
Is that good?
Hold on. Here we go. That's the one.
There we go. All right.
You might have to squint a little bit, guys, but we'll walk you through it.
I'm looking at it on full screen. It looks pretty good.
Okay.
So, look, here's the SEC, and these are the 2024 playoff odds, and these are our FanDuel numbers here. Okay, we're not sponsored by FanDuel or anything, but you can go get these. These were accurate as of yesterday, and I don't think they're moving a ton. I don't think these new numbers are moving a whole lot. Maybe after the spring transfer portal. So if you got something that you feel convicted about, do it right now before these numbers change as far as that goes. But let's just kind of go through the SEC, and these teams are the exact teams in the exact order in which Vegas was predicting these teams to finish in the SEC or best chances to win their conference. Okay, so that's kind of the same teams. They put those odds out to yes make the playoffs or no in that right column not make the playoffs. So you got Georgia at the top, and Georgia is the number one favorite in all of the country at minus 500 to make the playoffs. So if you are not a gambler, let's put it in some simple terms in which you can understand. So you would have to bet $500 to win $100 for Georgia to make the playoffs. So basically, Vegas is saying, the odds are they're making the playoff, right? And for if you wanted to bet and say that Georgia is not going to make the 12-team playoff, and you bet $100, you would get your $100 back and win 360. Okay, so that's what those numbers mean right there. So if they're easy to figure out if you just say, all right, if I, for Texas there, if I would have to bet 230 because that's a negative number, I would have to bet 230 to win $100 for them to make the playoff. So, y'all let me know, Mason. What do you think? What do you think about these? What's the best value on this board here? And I think it's funny that Alabama had a little bit better odds to win the conference, but LSU has got a little bit better odds to make the playoffs. Pretty interesting how that turned out. And I think Tennessee down there at plus 172 to make the playoffs. That's not bad odds there. It looks like Vegas feels like Tennessee is one of those first few teams out, which could possibly mean with an extra win or so, they could be one of those teams that sneaks in that 12-team playoff. So what do you think about this list, and who do you think is more likely to squander their opportunity, and who do you think is more likely to make it? It's obviously going to be more than one on this list, don't you think?
Yeah, if I'm looking at value and I want to make a play against and a play for, like a play for yes and a play for no in this case, or to make the playoffs or not and not make the playoffs, I actually really like the play for Alabama to make the playoffs at plus 124 and for LSU not to make the playoffs at minus 142. Those just given by this graph here are two fringe teams. And I think that you'd end up coming out pretty good, right? Bet $100 and you'd win 124. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. More than double your money on Alabama if they end up making it. I'm feeling better and better about this Alabama team as the spring progresses. They're kind of locking up some recruiting wins. We're hearing some buzz about some of the players that are that we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But some of the incoming talent, the young freshmen that are looking pretty good in spring ball so far. And I think that people just kind of have written Alabama off and have said Kalen DeBoer is going to have to wait a year to do anything special. And while that might be true, this is still one of the best programs in the country, right? I still hold firmly that Kalen DeBoer is one of the best coaches in the country. And it might be a tough year for them. I'm not saying that, they'll win the conference or anything like that, but to be top 12 in the country, I think they can do that. And so,
doesn't it feel like their floor is like worst case scenario, they finish like ranked 20th or something? Like that seems like the very bottom floor for Alabama. And even with Nick Saban being gone, because Alabama seems like their coaching staff may be better. And I'm not saying, obviously, head coach excluded there. nobody's better than Nick Saban, but at that same time, I feel like maybe overall the coaching staff might be a little bit better this year.
Well, I think they definitely upgraded at defensive coordinator. And you could argue offensive coordinator because we know Kalen DeBoer is probably going to be calling the plays for the most part. Even though, he promoted the tight end coach, I think that he's going to have his hand on that. So, yeah, I think for those two sides of the ball, we've got, two better coordinators, playing with the same roster. You got the same clay that you're going to be molding a team out of. And I don't know if it happens in year one. But I think Kalen DeBoer can win a national championship, and I think that he's going to be a perennial playoff contender, or have his team as a perennial playoff contender, and be in it. And I just really don't see there being much of a drop off. This is a team that is just full of 5 stars and 4 stars still. You've got some who are trying to come back into the program that left. I know they lost a few, but it's still Alabama. It's still the brand, and they're going to be just fine. So, not to make this an Alabama segment, but at the same time, I think that that's a pretty good bet. Buy while the stock is down, y'all. Obviously, the stock's down on Alabama. Don't be surprised to see them in playoff football come December and January.
Yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. I think if I was gonna, as far as betting goes, like actually trying to take advantage of the numbers, you can't really touch Georgia. You can't really touch Texas. Mm-hmm. They've got those two set up to where it's like there's really no sense in betting on those. I mean, I don't see a world in which they don't make the college football playoff unless there was just something crazy happening. And how are you going to bet on like an injury or something, right? So I think Alabama gives you the best value on betting yes to make the college football playoff. And I think Ole Miss would be the team that would give you the best value on voting no to making the college football playoff. And that's not to say that I think Ole Miss is just definitely not going to make the college football playoff. I'm not saying that. Vegas says there's a better chance that they do than they don't with that negative number in the yes column there. So, but my point is, I think that's a pretty good value at plus 100. If you feel like Ole Miss maybe could be one of those first teams out, I could see them finishing number 13 or 14 and be one of those first teams out. So I think that that's a pretty good possibility if you're looking for some value on this list here of SEC teams.
Hey, so I know you put this list together here. Was Missouri not on the list at all?
Yeah, they were.
Okay.
But Missouri was not in the top 6 odds to win the SEC championship.
Okay.
So, and that's where this list originated, and I converted it over. So, I can only look, hey, Missouri fans, I'm sorry about that. I probably should have put y'all on there, but you're going to see as we go through these conferences, there's one conference in particular I would love to see if anybody could bet and could guess it in the comment section which one it is. But there's one that they only bothered to put out like a couple of lines out for teams to even make the college football playoff. Yeah, y'all try to guess which conference that is before we get to it here. I bet you can probably guess it. Let's move on to the Big Ten here, and let's see what Vegas has set for us in the Big Ten. So you've got Ohio State there at the top, minus 400 to make, plus 300 not to make the college football playoff. No way I'm betting Ohio State not to make it. Again, these top 2 teams here, Ohio State and Oregon, I think they're set up to really just honestly deter you from betting on these because, I mean, I think the numbers are exactly right. There's nothing – I don't see anything there that's really worth betting money on unless you just had some kind of weird feeling that Oregon was not going to make the playoff. But we're going to talk about Oregon here in just a bit. I don't really see how you could bet on them not making a 12-team playoff at this time. One of the most interesting lines that I came across in this whole thing was Michigan. The way that they've got even numbers on yes and no. This is a pick 'em, guys. Vegas has put a pick 'em out there for you in a preseason betting format, and I mean, I think that there's a pretty good chance that Michigan doesn't make the playoff this year. I mean, let's just read the tea leaves. I mean, there's been a mass exodus of not only talent but coaches, and I mean, I don't know if you're giving me a 50-50 shot, I'm saying no, and I'm feeling like I'm probably got at least a 55% chance of hitting that. I feel like. So I feel like there's value there. What do you think about this list? I think there might be some value in Penn State as well, maybe, if you wanted to bet on them to make the college football playoff. We're going to talk about Penn State here in a bit too. Mason, what's your interpretation of this list? Kind of funny to see Southern Cal down there just ahead of Iowa, huh?
That's right. And, just to kind of give y'all an idea of how I think about this. So if you're making this bet today, right, it's April right now, you're not going to see your money for 8 months, pretty much, right? 7 or 8 months, depending on when you lay the bet. There is no way in hell I'm giving up $400 to potentially, see an extra $100 in 8 months. That's not smart. Like, you would be better off investing that money in the stock market and you would make more money, right? That's what Vegas is going to do. They're going to hold your $400, invest it. They're going to make plenty of money off of it, and then hope that you also lose so they can continue to make money off of it. But even if they have to pay you back, they made money, right? And that's kind of the idea here behind these odds.
Yeah.
So for me, anything over like $300, I wouldn't take that bet, because you're just not going to see your return very quick. It takes too long to get your return on your investment. So I'm really looking at those like Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State. Like, those are the only ones I'm really thinking about, because I mean, if I felt good about USC making the playoffs or Iowa making the playoffs, then yeah, that'd be a smart bet. But I don't think that's a wise bet. So for me, out of those three, I'm thinking that Penn State is a pretty good one, like you mentioned. I look at their schedule, and we're going to get into that here in a moment. I don't see a way that they don't go 10-2, and that puts them at 3 or 4 in the Big Ten more than likely. And I think that the top 3 teams of the Big Ten should go. So I like that bet. You're not putting up a ton of money, but pretty good return ultimately. $142, get 100 back, and then I'm with you. I think if I'm going to pick a team that isn't going to make it with good value, it's going to be Michigan. Just too much turnover there on the roster and on the coaching staff. I think that they've got to reestablish an identity for the most part, because Harbaugh was the identity of this team, and his you're seeing it now. I saw a clip on the San Diego Chargers the other day randomly, and you see it was one of the coaches. I think it was the strength and conditioning coach, who was talking about all the attention to detail, that they, when they're in the weight room, they have to put the 2.5 pound weights a certain way, on there, so that if you pull one off, the other one looks the exact same. And so they're teaching these professional athletes and forcing them to have discipline in everything that they do. So that's the type of stuff that Jim Harbaugh instilled in the program. And I think Sharon Moore probably wants to continue, but there's also going to be some changes. He has to have his own attitude and identity, and how that shifts the program, we don't know. But I think that I'm not saying that it's a guarantee that they don't make it, but I think that would be a pretty wise bet, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think betting on them not to make it would probably be my favorite bet on this on the Big Ten playoff odds that we have here. Let's move on over to the Big 12. As you can see, there's only 3 lonely teams there, and all of these teams, Vegas is saying are not favored to make the college football playoff necessarily. So plus 310. Look, if you feel good about any of these teams making the college football playoff, then bet on it, right? So somebody's got to make it, right? Somebody here is going to win the Big 12, and they're going to make it. So I think there's value here. And I think this creates a lot of interest in the Big 12, honestly, because I think a lot of people will bet on these numbers. But I think Utah's a good bet. Utah, look, it's springtime. Everybody's super positive. Everybody feels like they can win a conference championship at this time of the year. But I wouldn't be surprised if Utah didn't get some of their swagger back this year. Getting Cam Rising back, got some players coming back. Always really good along the lines of scrimmage. I think they're gonna eat like the big dog out there in the Big 12. I feel like. So I feel like Utah will be a pretty good bet. What do you think about these here? Arizona returned a lot of talent, although they have a new coach. So I'm kind of, I'm kind of questioning them. Now, they're not they've never even been in a 14 playoff discussion. So this is a team that's never even made a playoff. I don't know. I don't know that it's wise to bet on that, but boy, they sure had a good team and had a lot of momentum last year, and a lot of that talent comes back. And oh, by the way, have a Heisman caliber quarterback. And if you don't believe me, look at the Vegas Heisman odds and Noah Fafita. So what are your thoughts on these three teams? I know you like Kansas State as well.
Yeah. You're splitting hairs between Utah and Kansas State. I think that's a really good number to make the playoffs. And for the value, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of with you. Kansas State would be a good bet to me. If you went with either of those teams, I think you're okay. So, maybe you put a little bit of money on each of them and, hope that it pans out. I'm trying to do the math here. I'm not really sure that if you put even money on each of them, if that would work, but, yeah, it doesn't work when you do it.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. Anyway, so the interesting one here to me is Arizona. And look, I'm telling y'all, Arizona is a phony of a team, right? Going into the season, they're supposed to be some top 25 team. They're not, I think that Jed Fish is a top 25 coach, and that's what you saw last year when you put on the film and look at Arizona. You saw him scheming up some damn good plays, and so from everything I've heard, there were a lot of NFL coaches who were watching what Jed Fish was doing and implementing that into their playbook because it was brilliant. It was just some really innovative type of. And I'm not an X's and O's guys. I'm kind of taking this at face value from where I heard it from my source, and so. But by all accounts, he was the team. So I think Washington got a really good head coach, and Arizona is. I'm heavily fading Arizona. Not saying Noah Fafita's not a great player. Not saying McMillan's not a great player, but I don't think that those two alone are going to keep Arizona relevant like they were last year.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Jed Fish is about to probably have a little bit of a tough season this year.
Not to mention at what was it, San Jose State that their head coach came from? He won like 40% of his games last year, and had a losing season the year before that. The COVID year was, I think, the last year that he did good, and won like 10 games or something like that. But he did that in a COVID year, where everything gets an asterisk put by it. So I don't know. I think he kind of hit the head coaching job lottery there, and got a $13 million contract out of it, and I don't know that it was deserved.
Well, if you're a Big 12 fan and there's a team on here that you feel like has a chance to make the playoff, I cannot call Vegas and make that happen for you, but you can comment in the comment section and cry about it if you'd like. I will give you a shoulder to cry upon. I hate that for Arizona fans, Mason. I really do. Honestly, I mean, it does. It makes me feel bad because Arizona fans were so excited, man. And we do have some Arizona fans that are subscribed to this channel. Shouts out to you, Wildcat fans. But I hate that for the fans because I know that they were really fired up on Jed Fish and the prospect of this Wildcats team going forward. And let's finish up with number 4 of our Power 4 conferences. We've got the ACC, and we got the 2024 playoff odds for the ACC teams. Clemson and Florida State are atop pretty much every list that you're going to look at that regards anything to do with the ACC and playoff or conference championship odds. I'll go ahead and say it. If I got one team that you know what? Actually, I think I just found maybe my favorite bet. I really like Miami, Mason, to make the 12-team college football playoff. I think it's so possible. But here's what the College Football Playoff Committee doesn't respect this conference, though, and that's what gives me a little bit of hesitancy. As we've seen with all the financial stuff that we've seen, all the deals that have been done on television networks and all that, blah, 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 the ACC is valued around about the same as the Big 12. Now, there's a few more teams that Vegas has put out odds for them to make the college football playoff, so I think that's probably an indicator that there's more of a guarantee that a team from the ACC, could actually be a formidable opponent in a national championship race. But I don't know, man. Like, how many teams do you think are going to get in from the ACC? Because they're not going to have as many as the SEC or Big Ten, and I feel like your fourth place SEC or Big Ten team is going to be very comparable to probably like the second best ACC team, So, and I know the College Football Playoff Committee feels the same way, considering, Florida State went all the way undefeated until they got the absolute brakes beat off of them by my glorious Georgia Bulldogs at the end of the year. And College Football Playoff Committee said, "Nah, you're not good enough." Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this list? Where do you see some value? How many of these ACC teams do you think actually have a chance to get in?
I think that you could see 2 of these teams. I don't think it would stretch higher than 2, more than likely. But to me, I really like Louisville in this position. At plus 360, they hit the transfer portal like nobody's business. They've got some pretty good talent coming in. They've got Tyler Shook at quarterback coming in. And I just think for the value here, right? Put $10 on them, triple your money, more than triple your money, by putting $10 on them. I don't think that would be a bad play. I'm not telling you to go, bet the house or anything like that, but
sell your house and bet your mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead and do that.
Yeah. We're not sponsored by anybody. We're not telling you to do that, but you could.
But so, I mean, I think that Louisville's makes sense. If you're telling me a team that doesn't make the playoffs, you could get some money on, I would probably have to go with Florida State. I think that not having a quarterback, really, I mean, DJU coming in new, we kind of know what we're going to get out of him, but he's not a Heisman contender like we thought he was initially. Not to mention, you're not getting the DJU that you saw at Oregon State. You're getting 265-pound DJU. He's put on a couple pounds since he left. Oregon State.
Has he? Oh, man.
He's been on the crab leg diet down there at Florida State, and so he's we're getting all
we got not DJU, we have DJ Huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've got DJW. So
DJ Huge in the house.
Yeah. So maybe that means he's running over some ACC defenders, but
very slowly.
I don't know what we're gonna get out of him. So, and then not to mention the wide receiver talent that left. So,
yeah,
I'm not saying that they can't make the playoffs, but for betting purposes here, I think that'd be a pretty good bet with positive money.
Yeah. And we kid about DJU. I think he's a super nice guy, but I think it's hilarious when he takes off running. I have this reoccurring dream, right, that it's me trying to sprint in an undisclosed location, but I have a parachute attached to me, and I can't sprint. And I'm literally like leaning all the way forward, almost like touching the ground in front, trying to pull this parachute. And that's what I feel like DJU looks like when he runs. Like he has a
Yeah.
massive parachute behind him, and it's like, how is he possibly moving that slow? It kind of looks like when you go back and watch like film from like the 40s or something football, and they're just like, like barely moved. And that's what I feel like DJU does whenever it lumbers around the field. Look, he had a decent year last year. It was not a bad year. He leaves, a place like Corvallis and comes to a much, better weather climate. I would say in Tallahassee, and will probably have a lot better weapons around him. So, I'm not saying that he cannot be successful in that offense. I think he definitely can, but just not my favorite quarterback in the world. And but Florida State, maybe they'll have a steady guy. Well, they got a guy that's got a lot of experience anyway, right? So,
Well, then on the defensive side of the ball, look at who they were against Georgia, right, and how they matched up. That's the team that is coming back this coming year, right? That the only players who weren't playing for the most part, other than Rodemaker who transferred out, were players who are going to the NFL or leaving the program in some capacity. So that's the team that you're left with, is the one that got drugged by Georgia. On top of that, obviously they had a recruiting class and they got like seemingly 10 players from Alabama, but still, I don't think that those, I think it was literally like 8 players that they got out of the transfer portal. And a ton of freshmen. That's not going to make a difference, right? That doesn't make you a playoff team, even in a 12-team playoff. So, I'm sliding on Florida State here a little bit, but maybe they'll upset me. Maybe I'll change my mind before the end of the season or before the end of the preseason. I'm well within my right to do that. But today, I'm going to trash Florida State just a little bit.
How dare you, sir? All right. Thank you again, everybody, for watching. We just know y'all in and out, and thanks for the thumbs up that we've seen.
I think I have to do it. See, it only does it for me.
Okay. That's fine.
You didn't turn that feature on?
I don't even know what the hell that is. But I've seen that go off whenever we weren't doing this.
I think it just like catches me like holding my hand up and doing a gesture, and I don't know.
Cool. That's weird, but it's pretty cool. All right. Top freshmen making noise in spring ball and names that we need to know headed into 2024. That's always kind of the part that I feel like kind of goes untalked about in spring, and rightfully so. You got a bunch of kids coming from high school, and we don't know who all these kids are coming out of high school necessarily. I mean, in these days, we know more about these guys than we ever have. But to the casual football fan and even some of the diehards, it can be put you in a little bit of a crab swirl trying to keep up with all the names in high school 3 years out, right, when these guys are getting offered, and keeping up with all the guys that are already in the NCAA playing football. So it can be a lot, and we've narrowed it down to a few here that and we didn't narrow it down. This is on 24/7. You can go check out their story. You can find it. But these are all freshmen that they're saying that we should be watching for, and guys that we all know very well and probably followed a lot of their recruitment. So let's talk about some of these guys, and let's make sure that we're on the right. There we go. Make sure we're in the right framework so we look good on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, or if you're watching on X, thank you so much for doing so. If you would, like the video. And if you're a diehard college football fan, you're home. Hit the subscribe button. Hang out with us. Comment in the comment section. We're very responsive there. We certainly do appreciate that. Jordan Washington, a running back that has went to Arizona. He's out of Long Beach, California. Number 17 running back in the country, number 20 in California. He will be playing for Arizona this year, and an Arizona team that we just talked about, missing their head coach, but does bring a couple of nice pieces back. They'll be competing in a conference where I think maybe they'll have a little bit of slack to get things figured out after their head coach heads over to Washington to play in the Big Ten. I think this is somebody to watch. I'm interested to see some Arizona football. What about you? What do you think about this one? And take us to the next one, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, Jordan Washington's a guy, you look at this and you say, all right, number 17 running back, that's good, but not too high. I think he was maybe, I don't even know if he was a top 300 overall player. I guess he probably was, but 5'11", 180, what's to like, about this guy, about the stats that you see? Well, one stat that you don't see there is a 10.48 100-meter dash. That is blazing fast, especially for a running back. And so I think that's what makes him so intriguing as a player. I think that he's going to be able to do a lot coming out of the backfield with Noah Fafita passing him the football. I'm anxious to see what Arizona is going to be able to do with Jordan Washington. I don't know that he's necessarily, going to be an Ollie Gordon type, right? That's a different type of football player in Ollie Gordon, but this guy could be similar to what we saw as an impact player for USC and Zachariah Branch in a different position. This time being at running back. I'm really high on this guy. And, running back's one of those positions where you can come in as a true freshman and do pretty well, know the play, know your assignment, go and execute. Now, he's not going to be great at blocking. He's not going to be great in pass protection, just given his size. I think 180 might be like soaking wet 180. He's a pretty small guy, but he's going to be able to add a new dynamic. And you might see, similar to what Texas A&M did with Ruben Owens last year, you might see him line up in the slot a little bit and just try to get him the football, get him some, give him a pass behind the line of scrimmage, let him go, some screen plays and all that. But from all accounts, he's an exciting player to watch and somebody who's going to contribute right away for Arizona.
Probably going to get some opportunities on third down for sure. Third and longer situations and some like you said, passes out of the backfield. 10.31 100-meter time. That was good for second in the state of California last year in the 100-meter track championships. And as track, it seems like track has just really kind of blown up over the last few years. It seems like more and more of these guys are doing multiple sports that kind of coincide with one another. One hand feeding the other, and that's the case with Jordan Washington. Sammy Brown, man, this is a guy. We're Georgia boys. We live in Georgia. Sammy Brown was a guy that not really around our area that we live, but just in the state of Georgia in general was a big deal. University of Georgia wanted this guy a lot, but he went to Clemson, and this is somebody that you need to watch out for. This is one of the next faces of this Clemson defense, and I think that he will be somebody that's going to contribute right away. The number 2 linebacker in the nation and the number 2 player overall in the state of Georgia. He's poised at 6'2", 230. He comes in ready to play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This guy is an animal, and number 2 in Georgia just kind of says it all. Georgia's a hotbed for college football talent, and I think that he's going to be an impact player. You got Jeremiah Trotter, who left the Clemson Tigers last year, and he's got an opening spot, to go and play. Probably a big reason why he didn't end up going to Georgia and why he chose Clemson over Georgia is because he's almost promised and guaranteed playing time right away. I think he'll have a similar impact as Brian Brzee had on the defensive line. He'll come in. He's going to wow you with his speed at that size. And he's going to do really well in the ACC, I think, this year.
This was the guy that got into Clemson literally as early as possible before spring ball, got the ball rolling, and it hasn't taken him long to turn heads over there. He's ready to play, raring to go. Very excited to see Sammy Brown. Dylan Raiola, as a Georgia fan, all of us are very familiar with Mr. Raiola, who moved to Buford, Georgia, and played quarterback here in the state of Georgia. He came from Arizona, right? And he's 6'3", 230. His dad was an NFL lineman. Last minute, really, decided to go to Nebraska and took a nice NIL deal. And I'm thinking that he's going to be the starting quarterback, right? So naturally, you've got to think that that Matt Rule is going to have this guy playing a lot of snaps this year, and going to be very interesting to see how he performs. What do you think about Dylan Raiola making this list?
Yeah, I mean, I think you cannot really get much worse than what we saw from Sims last year. He had just such a great ability of turning the ball over. Like he just loved it. He was the best I've ever seen at it. And not saying that Dylan Raiola can't match what he did, but you gotta give him a year, right? I do think that he will, if not right away, be the starter eventually. He'll overtake. It looks like Heinrich Harburg is first in the pecking order, but I think that Dylan Raiola will end up winning that starting job before it's all said and done. Haven't heard much coming out of spring about him. I'm anxious to see kind of what he looked like. By all accounts, this was a little bit of a project, but Dylan Raiola is a guy who really didn't even start playing quarterback till he got to high school, and is unpolished. He's raw, but has all of the tangibles and the intangibles. He's a great guy by all accounts. Good leader, and obviously you see the size there at 6'3", 230. Guy can fling it from anywhere. You just see as a high school quarterback how effortless it was for him to throw the football to the back of the end zone at will. And so we saw him take a step up in competition last year, go play for Buford. Took a little bit of lumps, but ultimately, considering the step up in competition, I thought he played pretty well, and deserves to finish as a 5-star quarterback and somebody to definitely keep your eyes on moving forward for Nebraska. I think he's he's a Nebraska legacy player, and I think that he is really wanting and itching to bring Nebraska back to prevalence in college football. And I think he may end up doing that. Matt Rule's done a pretty good job so far, I think, considering, he's only had 1 year, but he seems to get a lot of attention, on the program in a good way, and did a pretty good job with the transfer portal, and with recruiting. I think that Dylan Raiola, if he performs really well, I think Nebraska takes another step. And obviously their NIL, program is able to help with that too. But if Dylan Raiola can take another step forward, they're going to get more money pushed into that NIL package. And I think that Nebraska could be a team to watch come 2025 and beyond.
Yeah. Matt Rule's teams typically do much better, at least collegiately, in their second year. And so I am interested to see if they can make that jump there in Nebraska his second year at the helm of the program. Let's talk about L.J. McCray, defensive lineman, 6'6", 274 pounds, out of Daytona Beach, Florida. This was a big, much needed get for Billy Napier, and kind of actually makes me think of DJ Lagway also, who didn't make this list, I guess, because he'll be splitting reps there at Florida. LJ McCray is somebody that 24/7 feels really good about to contribute to this defense this year. This was the number 1 defensive lineman and number 3 player in the state of Florida for the 2024 cycle. What do you think about LJ McCray, and what do you think is that? We know what the outlook is for the Florida Gators. I'm not going to sit here and act like this is about to be some great year for the Florida Gators, but that doesn't mean it can't be a good year for LJ McCray. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's always going to be tough coming in and as a true freshman starting on the defensive line in the SEC. These are some really big offensive linemen that you're going up against. You look at Florida's schedule, and it is scary for anybody. It's one of the worst I've ever seen, one of the toughest I've ever seen. And so I think if LJ McCray can get to like 2.5 sacks on the season, it'd be a good year. I don't think that you look at the numbers and say, and try to figure out if he had a good year or not. Look at his size, 6'6", 274. He'll probably get up above 280 by the time he gets that freshman plate of armor, that college plate of armor put on him. He'll probably play at a lean 280, and be a real difference maker. I think with that length, you could play him pretty much anywhere on the defensive line, and he'd be pretty effective. So I think that, you see him on this list instead of DJ Lagway because, he's going to play right away, and like you mentioned, Graham Mertz is going to play for Florida. And I think that that's kind of the right decision there.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Florida needs all the help they can get, and LJ McCray is saying he can be their Huckleberry, so we'll see. Dylan Stewart, this is a guy I actually heard a lot about in his recruitment. This is an edge rusher, 6'5", 245 pounds, out of Washington, D.C. Number 2 edge in the country and number 1 player in D.C. South Carolina needs lots of help too, Mason. What do you think the outlook is for Dylan Stewart? This is a guy that's going to probably be able to play pretty much every game as long as he stays healthy, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy you're going to see running all over the field, coming off the edge. Number 2 edge player in the country. Some services, I believe, had him at number 1. I know he was number 1 on Georgia's board for a while. This guy is the real deal, and he's going to come in similar to Nolan Smith. I think he's got a similar frame and type of athleticism, but he's going to be tasked with going and getting the quarterback. Nolan Smith, for anybody who remembers, he came into Georgia, had a really good freshman year, but he also kind of shared that spotlight with the rest of the Georgia defense. South Carolina doesn't have that luxury, so they're gonna have a lot of pressure on Dylan to come out and play and be effective and be disruptive right away. And I think if you're gonna put that kind of pressure on any sort of freshman, guys like Dylan Stewart and LJ McCray, who we just talked about, are certainly capable of putting up some pretty gaudy numbers even as freshmen.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellis Robinson. Talk about a freshman on a big time defense, getting a really awesome opportunity. You don't see a ton of true freshmen playing in the defensive backfield for the University of Georgia. Yeah, I guess you do every once in a while. I can think of maybe like a Tyson Campbell recently, and a few others. Malachi Starks as a safety, but these are guys that are currently playing. Some of those guys are currently playing in the NFL or are going to be over the next year or two. This tells me right here, all indications point to the fact that Ellis Robinson will probably be doing the same thing. This is an NFL talent, and I think we're going to get to see a lot of Ellis Robinson sooner rather than later, as one of the 2 corner spots are open for Georgia. What are you hearing about Ellis Robinson in the spring? I know there's a lot of buzz.
Yeah, a lot of buzz with him and KJ Bolden, another 5-star safety who's probably, not to get off a topic here a little bit, but KJ Bolden is probably getting a lot more snaps now as Malachi Starks is out with a shoulder injury, and he'll be out for the rest of spring practice. So those are going to be very important reps where they may have KJ playing in a package or something like that. But I bring KJ up when we're talking about Ellis Robinson because in the Georgia circles, right, you don't get to talk about one without the other because they're both just really electric on this defense, and they're both making plays. Ellis Robinson probably has more of a legitimate path to playing time. There's like you mentioned, there's an open cornerback position. He hasn't taken that over yet. I don't see that happening until after the spring window if he does. But this guy, you know, I know right here you see that he was the number one cornerback and number 2 player in Florida. Well, he was only number 2 in Florida because Jeremiah Smith was the number 1 player in Florida, right? And he's somebody we'll get to. He's a stud. But talk about a matchup. Can we get Ellis Robinson versus Jeremiah Smith in the national championship this year? If it's Georgia and Ohio State, can we just see him mirror Jeremiah Smith?
You have spoken now into existence. It's going to happen now.
I hope
we're going to look back on this 4th day of April and we'll be like, holy shit, you called it.
Yeah, I hope so, because that's what I want to see. Like, the drama cannot be any bigger. Look, both of these players, you know, are absolutely at the top tier of this class in college football. And I think that Ellis Robinson is a guy who's just sticky. You watch him play. He's already, you know, going up against the wide receivers for Georgia and making plays, you know. Terrence Edwards, I heard in an interview recently, compared him to Champ Bailey. He said that he made a diving interception that was just one of the most athletic plays he's seen, and it really reminded him of Champ Bailey, somebody who could play both ways if you need him to, if you ask him to. You love to hear that. I mean, Champ Bailey's a Hall of Famer, you know, and one of the best to ever do it at Georgia. So I have really high hopes for Ellis Robinson. Kirby's keeping it kind of close to the vest as far as, you know, Kirby doesn't like to overhype these players, right? But when they do well, he mentions it. And he has mentioned Ellis Robinson and KJ Bolden both in his pressers, which is a really good sign, because this was before the first scrimmage even, right? Typically, what Kirby's MO is, let's chop the team down, right? After the first scrimmage, it was awful. That was the worst scrimmage I've ever seen. Second scrimmage, you know, we're getting a little bit better, but still not where we need to be. By the last scrimmage, you know, I think we ended it on a high note, you know, and I can already tell you that's what he's going to say by the end, you know, at G-Day and all that.
Leaders got to step up. These leaders got to be more vocal.
That's right. Yep. So, but to hear Ellis Robinson, you know, getting some praise from Kirby early, I think is a really good sign. But Kirby likes to temper expectations, and he's not gonna declare a starter, because I'll remind you that Daniel Harris entered the transfer portal and decided to come back, as well as Julian Humphrey, right? Mm-hmm. 2 cornerbacks that Kirby wants to keep them on the roster. So if he announces Ellis Robinson ahead of them, or even shows it on the playing field, then both of them could end up actually entering the spring transfer portal window. He doesn't want that. I don't want that. I think Julian Humphrey especially should be starting over anybody in that cornerback room. But we also know that Dalen Everett's on that other side and probably has that position pretty well locked up. But two cornerback positions open. I think Ellis Robinson is going to see a lot of playing time, but whether or not he gets a starting position, you know, it'll that's a bit of a pipe dream. But if he does, I think that just stands to who he is as a player, and I think he's fully capable of that.
Well, if he gets the start, we all know what's going to happen. When you start a freshman at corner in the SEC, they will be tested. They will be tested over and over until they either prove that they can handle it or give you a reason not to test them anymore. And Ellis Robinson, Malachi Starks, see, that was the thing. Malachi Starks put something on film the very first game of the year last year, you know, and everybody was just like, whoa, all right, don't throw over there. Don't throw over there. And so I felt like as the year went on, people just gave up throwing to that part of the field, right? And Ellis Robinson have his work cut out for him, because we all know Malachi Starks is a generational talent. So I remember Tyson Campbell coming in, and boy, he got tested, and it didn't always turn out great. You know, there was some lumps that were taken in that first year as a freshman. So we'll see. Very, very excited for Ellis Robinson. Let's keep it moving. Cam Coleman, wide receiver, 6'3", 188 pounds, out of Phoenix City, Alabama. All the rave coming out of spring ball. number 2 wide receiver in the country and the number 1 player in the state of Alabama. This was a huge coup for Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers, who desperately needed a playmaking wide receiver immediately, if not sooner. This team was absolutely hamstrung by the fact that there was not a soul on the team that could catch the football last year. I mean, it was one of the worst wide receiver units that I can remember, especially at a place like Auburn that recruits at a high level. And Cam Coleman fits more of that prototypical thought process that I have for the Auburn Tigers, and the fact that they can get that elite talent. This is a guy that's going to contribute this year. And, man, he's got everything that you want out of a wide receiver. He's big, he's fast, he's a good route runner. We'll see how he can block. That's going to be very important in this Hugh Freeze offense. What do you think about Cam Coleman?
Yeah, I think he's going to be asked to come in and contribute right away. Like you said, this was a terrible unit last year. And I think that I think Peyton Thorne's starting to grow on me a little bit, where I don't know that he was necessarily the issue, last year. I know he didn't put up the numbers anybody wanted, but had a lot of drops, and so you're not going to get a rhythm going like that. So I trust Hugh Freeze and knowing what he's doing, and not going out and getting a transfer quarterback. Not saying he didn't try at all, but he didn't really overextend himself in that regard, and just go out and get anybody. Also have a pretty good quarterback, top 50 overall player in Walker White coming in, so maybe that has something to do with it. But Cam Coleman, by all accounts, is an absolute freak. He was the number 2 receiver behind Jeremiah Smith. Total package, right? They also have another guy who was a 5-star when he committed. I think he ended up losing his 5th star, but a couple of studs coming in at receiver. A few transfer portal guys as well. They bring in Lewis from Georgia State at running back, who is pretty dynamic out of the backfield as well. So I think that having these weapons is really going to set Peyton Thorne up for a pretty good season. And overall, this Auburn offense is going to benefit from it.
Well, and look, this is an Auburn team that last year, everybody, well, not everybody forgets. I haven't forgot, but should have beat Alabama.
Yeah,
very much should have won that football game. Just a spoof at the end of the game, and an amazing throw. You got to give it to Jalen Milroe on that. Absolutely amazing dime piece to the back of the end zone to win that game. And some weird things happened in the Iron Bowl, but that was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And if you really think about it, think about the trajectory that Auburn would have had headed into this season if they would have claimed that victory like they had it. They had it, Mason, and it squeezed right through their fingers. And maybe that will prove to be the motivation that this team needed to have a really, really good spring and fall camp. And I'm actually very excited to see Auburn this season and see what they can do with a few new players. Colin Simmons, linebacker out of Duncanville, Texas. Admittedly, this is a guy I don't know a ton about. Number 4 edge in the country, number 5 player in the state of Texas. But this Texas linebacker and defensive front is kind of going through a bit of an overhaul. And look, they brought guys in the transfer portal and have addressed their needs, but Colin Simmons is a guy that 24/7 feels good about going out and contributing in his freshman season. What do you think about that? What do you think about Colin Simmons?
Yeah, not a guy who's probably going to start right away. Remember, Texas brought in Trey Moore from UTSA, which was the number 1 edge player
dude.
In the transfer portal. Really bad guy. And but on the defensive line, you've got to have a 2 deep that's competent and can play. If Colin Simmons can crack the 2 deep, I think he's going to put up some really good numbers. This picture doesn't do it justice. I saw another picture of him in his high school uniform. This guy's developed. He is built, and he's ready to go rip someone's head off. Looking at his numbers, he had 44.5 sacks across 3 years in high school. Yeah, he can play. So beware. He's listed as a linebacker. I think if he wanted to, he could put his hand in the dirt and just go after the quarterback from anywhere on the field. So I think he's one to know, especially headed into 2025. But we'll see some flashes this year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver, 6'3", 215. You're going to hear this name ad nauseum, folks. You're going to hear a lot about this guy pictured here on your screen. Number 1 wide receiver in the country, number 1 player in the state of Florida out of Opelika, Florida. What's to say? Ohio State does it again. They've got the best wide receiver core in the country, I think. And this guy, for 6'3", 215 pounds right off the rip, that's unbelievable. This guy's got a great frame. You can't teach that. And by the way, they can teach wide receivers pretty much everything else that they need to know over at Ohio State. Isn't that right, Mason?
Yeah. So for anybody who knows the Ohio State tradition, this was a guy who came in as a true freshman, right, and lost his black stripe, right. And what that is at Ohio State, they tape a black stripe across the middle of your helmet over the white piece, right. They get some black electrical tape or whatever, tape it over that. Well, above all the transfer portal players, above Will Howard and everybody, he was the first one to lose that stripe. And basically when they decide, that you've actually become, one of us, they call it giving him his stripe or something like that. Lose your stripe. Anyways, we kind of get what that is, right? It's a rite of passage, and he was the first player to kind of lose that. And so that says something, but what also says something is the fact that he's just out here in spring practice, just mossing dudes. Caleb Downs is out there, probably the number 1 or 2 safety, depending on how you feel about Malachi Starks, but number 1 or 2 safety in the country, and guys going up over him and catching footballs, catching touchdown passes. Just an absolute freak. Probably the next Julio Jones, and Ohio State's better for it. I'm anxious to see what he does as a true freshman. I think he's going to be an absolute phenom. And I don't know that we've seen a wide receiver come out as a true freshman like this and be so ready to be like an All-American, and we know it ahead of time. Brock Bowers was kind of like that as a pass catcher, but we didn't know it, going into the off season or going into the season, during the off season. But I think that Jeremiah Smith is really that guy.
Yeah, I think so too. And some guys that we didn't include on this list, that 24/7 included on their list, was 3 of Alabama's 5 stars that they picked up this past year. Xavier Brown, Jalen Mbakwe, and Xavier Mincy are all there. There was an exodus in that defensive backfield for Alabama in that transfer portal, and guys moving on in other directions. So you've got an immediate opportunity for those guys to contribute on a team that is going to be rebuilding their defensive backfield in some ways. Do you think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve in that cornerback room and safety room for the Alabama Crimson Tide? It seems this team went. I mean, when you lose a guy like Caleb Downs, you don't replace that. Okay, that's there's nothing to do to replace that. That's a guy that can play any position in the defensive backfield. In the box, outside the box, man to man, whatever you need him to do. So obviously that's a glaring hole, but there was several other guys that have moved on to other programs, and it has created a bit of a black hole there. We saw LSU try to play this game last year through the transfer portal, and we know what that got them, Mason. That there's going to be teams that have good passing attacks that can exploit a secondary that's discombobulated. Is that going to be the case for the Alabama Crimson Tide, do you think?
It could be. I know, as an Alabama fan, if you said, hey, we could afford to lose all these players except for Caleb Downs, right? How important would it be to have Caleb Downs in the backfield playing center field, back there in the defensive backfield and kind of getting these 3 freshmen in place? You don't have that now. Trey Amos is gone. Niblack
Christian
is gone,
Story.
or not Niblack. Story is gone. Thank you. So there's no leadership in that unit, which could be an issue. Now we could also see 3 stud 5-stars come in and say, well, hey guys, it's on us. This defense is going to be good or it's going to be bad based on how we play. And I kind of believe that, honestly, that unit as a whole, not necessarily these 3 freshmen, but the unit as a whole, the DBs are going to be tested. Maybe they rise to the occasion. I don't know. But this is a unit and a haul in this recruiting class that I pointed to and said, hey, this could actually be really big. Like, there was all this talk about Kalen DeBoer and what's going to happen. And I'm like, meanwhile, they've got a really good recruiting class coming in, specifically on the defensive side of the football. Maybe that helps out Kalen DeBoer. Bringing in a great DC certainly doesn't hurt. And I'm anxious to see what these young bucks can do.
Yeah, I am too. Definitely going to be a season of change for the Alabama Crimson Tide whenever you lose, the best coach that's ever done it. There's going to be a lot of changes that go on, and I'm interested to see how the new coaching staff and team adapts to that. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in. People keep in and out as the show goes on. I appreciate you all the same. If you missed anything, this will be loaded up. You can go back and watch it. If you're into watching the clips, we'll be releasing those throughout the week, and that's what we are making now while you are watching live. So we certainly appreciate it. If you would, hit the like button and help us out.
Hey, Mark, can you give me just 2 minutes here? I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to go or filibuster or not, but I'm going to hop off for just a couple seconds.
All right, I'm just going to start on Penn State.
Okay.
That's all right. All right. So we've got our schedule look-aheads, guys, and we are going to be looking at the Penn State Nittany Lions today. And look, I think this is a super interesting season for the Nittany Lions. We're coming off of multiple years in a row where beyond and below the college football playoff, this team has accomplished everything possible, minus a college football playoff berth and Big Ten championships. 10-2 seasons is basically the bread and butter of this James Franklin team. And admittedly, guys, there was a really funny situation that happened this week. So I called Mason. I called Mason on Monday, and I said, oh, my gosh, I can't believe what I just read, dude. James Franklin said that if they don't make the playoffs this year, then he's going to step aside and resign. And I could not believe it. I absolutely could not believe it. Well, the reason I couldn't believe it or wrap my head around it was because it was absolutely not true. It was an April Fool's joke. And this thing had me calling my cousin here, Mason, and being like, dude, did you see this? They got me, dude. They got me so freaking good. And I was actually kind of mad about it. But I feel like it was just believable enough for me because of the situation that Penn State's been in. I was just telling everybody, Mason, about how I called you this past week, and I was like, dude, James Franklin's going to resign if he doesn't make the playoff. Mason's like, what? Out there working on the road, you're just like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But I think it just kind of shows where this fan base is at with this team. There's going to be a lot of change. You got Andy Kotelnicki coming in to run this offense. He comes over from Kansas. Everybody knows Kansas had a really great creative offense. They really did. Scoring points wasn't the problem. It was the defense. Keeping the other team out of the end zone was really the issue for the Kansas Jayhawks. But this guy had a lot of creativity, man. I mean, he had both quarterbacks on the field at the same time. And I think, that's exactly what this Penn State team needs. They need some creativity. They need some playmakers. Look, there was games last year where fans were booing, like the Michigan game. There were fans in the stands booing the play calling in the Michigan game. And I don't think that it's the fact that James Franklin doesn't want to throw the ball down the field. I don't think that's the case. I think that the team was ill-equipped to do so. So that begs the question in this offense this year, what are the wide receivers going to look like? You add Julian Fleming, I think that he has to pan out if you want to have a successful season or really get to where you want to go in that elite status of trying to make the college football playoff. And defensively, how do you answer questions at linebacker? Admittedly, I'm less concerned about the defense. I think the defense is going to be fine. There are guys
I
there
agree.
to. I think they're going to step up, and I think they're going to be fine. Abdul Carter stepped away from the linebacker role, going to the defensive end spot. And honestly, Mason, I mean, maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree here, or maybe I'm just dead wrong, but I felt like this was, I don't know Abdul Carter, so I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I felt like this was, in a sense, kind of a selfish move to go to defensive end. They're already stacked as a team on the defensive end position. And so I felt like this wasn't for the best interest of the team. It sounded more like, to me, Abdul Carter decided that he would be playing defensive end, and Penn State just kind of had to, serve that spot up for him. So we could go round and round and talk all day about this offense. I think it's a good offensive line. I think it's a really good running back room with Allen coming back. It comes down to those playmakers. Can Lambert Smith, help this team get over the top? Can Julian Fleming do the same? Can Drew Aller be great instead of just a game managing quarterback? It's fun to go out and beat the hell out of teams like, Bowling Green and Kent State and Illinois, and that's typically what Penn State does. But then it comes down to 2 games a year, the offense can't really do anything. And this new schedule is going to really help, guys. If you look at the schedule here on your screen, we're going to go through it in a minute, but as you see, there's no Michigan on there. So with the new system in the Big Ten, there is no Big Ten East or Big Ten West. And so you had those big 3 that were piled up together in the Big Ten East, and all 3 had to play each other every year and kind of canceled each other out of contention for some big spots and playoff spots, I feel like. So now that the Big Ten is kind of more spread out, and there's no divisions, you're not going to always have Michigan and Ohio State on that schedule, and I think that's a nice thing for the Penn State program. So what are your thoughts on Penn State and this offense and defense? As we're in spring, this isn't a deep dive, okay? We're not going deep. We're going to do that later in the offseason as we know more. I want to see the spring game. I want to see what Tom Allen has installed on this defense. If you don't know, then now you know. Tom Allen was a head coach at Indiana for a long time. Got fired, took a buyout, and now he's coaching the defense, and he seems like he's having a ball, kind of doing his best Chip Kelly impression defensive style there in Penn State. So what is your thoughts as Penn State finishes 10-2 last year with a Peach Bowl loss to Ole Miss, 10-3 overall? What is the expectation this year? The win-loss over-under is set at 9.5. How do you feel about that? And let's go over the schedule.
Yeah, so I'll get to the schedule in a minute. And in particular that 9.5, I'm not sure. I feel like I've got a pretty good bet on that, but let me go over the roster here a little bit. I've got some things to point out. So Julian Fleming, obviously being brought in, was huge. He's the wide receiver that's getting a lot of buzz. He's the player that's getting a lot of buzz as a transfer player on the offensive side of the football. And rightly so. I mean, this is a wide receiver group that was not good last year, right? Dante Cephas ends up leaving the program because they were that bad. He transferred to Kansas State now and was expected to come in from Kent State and be a playmaker, and couldn't catch. Just really didn't have any games where he lived up to the billing. So I think that you kind of have addition by subtraction there. I think Julian Fleming is a definite step up and a more guaranteed transfer player than Dante Cephas was coming in. You still got Lambert Smith. I think that gives you a pretty good 1-2 combo with Fleming and Lambert Smith. But I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State doesn't continue to look at what's out there in the transfer portal, in the wide receiver room in particular, to get them some more pass catching options. They're usually pretty good at tight end as well. I think Tyler Warren is going to be pretty good. Again, I did hear, you mentioned Katron Allen. Apparently, he's battling a little bit of an injury. Potentially, it hasn't been announced, but he was not seen at practice earlier this week. That's not what you like to hear, but at the same time, you're not worried about a junior running back, getting reps in spring practice. You'd rather see him get healthy, right? So it doesn't concern me too much, but at the same time, kind of interested to know what that injury is. If there is an injury, could have been a non-physical reason, for him not being there.
Yeah.
Nolan Rucci comes in. He's gonna start right away at right tackle. I think anytime you can find a good player in the transfer portal to play offensive line, you do what you can to get them, because they just don't happen. Like that doesn't happen a lot on the offense or defensive side of the football in the transfer portal on the lines of scrimmage. And then on the defensive side of the football, real quick, AJ Harris comes in from Georgia. He was their biggest get overall as a player. As a transfer player, he was actually ranked higher than Julian Fleming. He's a good solid player, and I think that he's going to step in right away and play cornerback. Another former Georgia player and cornerback, Jalen Kimber, comes in. Now you may recognize the name from Florida, because he played for Florida for a couple of seasons, but his freshman year he was at Georgia, never saw the playing field, transferred to Florida. Now is in his second transfer, coming over to Penn State. I think that he will end up overtaking Cam Miller for that position, but at the end of the day, he's going to have some playing time, right? He's going to get some playing time and be a factor, even if it's as a second teamer. All right, so looking at this schedule, I do think that Penn State is going to get marginally better. One question that I have is Drew Aller. Can he go from like you said, kind of an average player, right? Average quarterback, not really a threat downfield like you would hope, given his stature and given his recruiting ranking and things like that. I hope that he's able to take a step forward and get 15 to 20% better this year. And if he does that, I think that this could be a playoff team. So looking at this schedule, I'm seeing 10-2 last year, lost to Michigan and Ohio State. This team could win 11 games this year. I mean, they've got some tough ones. West Virginia is tough. At West Virginia is going to be a tough game. At Wisconsin, right? That's going to be a tough game. Ohio State is one that you have to look at and say, we're probably going to lose, guys. Like, just be aware. It's going to be a whiteout game or whatever. But that's probably one that I'd say they have maybe a 25% chance at winning, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then USC. I feel pretty confident in saying that Penn State's better than USC. But you never know. With the Lincoln Riley offense, we don't know what Miller Moss is going to be like. USC's new quarterback, now that Caleb Williams has declared for the NFL draft. So that's another one, but those are 4 games, and I only really count one of those as a for sure loss. And I would give them a greater than 50% chance to win the other 3. So I think that 10 wins is the floor here. And I think that 11 wins is very doable, and at 11-1, you're probably playing for a Big Ten championship, and you're definitely going to the college football playoff at that point. Love to see them against Oregon. I wish that was a matchup we could see, but at the end of the day, I think this is a pretty favorable schedule for Penn State, and I think that I know it wasn't a true. I know it was just a rumor, an April Fool's joke or whatever, but I think we'll continue to see James Franklin coach the Penn State Nittany Lions moving forward.
Yeah, one would think. Typically, whenever a head coach gets rid of their coordinators, which I know Manny Diaz ended up taking a head coaching job at Duke, they didn't want to get rid of Manny Diaz.
Yeah,
but that's kind of usually buys you at least a couple of years. And look, this schedule comes at the right time. I think you nailed it, Mason. This is a very favorable schedule. You get Ohio State at home, okay, your hardest game of the year by far. Who's to say? Ohio State, doesn't have trouble, at quarterback that day, or there's not snow on the ground, and or the wind's blowing. We all know how the Ohio State Buckeyes don't like the wind to blow. Right, so this is a very favorable schedule. These teams that they pick up from the Big Ten West, they always beat the hell out of them. And I know there's no Big Ten West anymore, but I am saying, for those teams, they typically have really good success against them. So USC, I feel like Penn State is going to be able to blow them off the line of scrimmage. That's my anticipation for the Penn State team to be able to do that against USC. Just like we kind of saw Notre Dame just absolutely bludgeon USC last year on the lines of scrimmage, I think Penn State can kind of mimic that again. So I think that 9.5. I think I'm betting over on the 9.5. Mason, don't you think?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. I mean,
10 for sure. You can definitely do 10, bro.
I think so. I feel pretty good about Penn State getting at least 10 wins, just because of their schedule, and like I said, I feel like this team's gonna be better than last year. I know you lose Chop Robinson, but you lose Fasciano on the offensive line. Those are two absolute studs, that are impossible to replace. But Theo Johnson off at tight end, I think, was a big loss. But at the end of the day, I think if Drew Aller can get 20% better, that sort of offsets everything, because this is the quarterback we're talking about, and he's going to get the ball every play.
Well, if you're a Penn State fan, thank you so much for watching this video. We want you to be part of the 1st&LONG college football family, not family like the LSU coach. We're from the South, but we ain't that Southern. We want you to come be part of our college football family. Penn State is in for a very exciting year, and we're going to be covering them throughout that exciting year that we've got coming up. And I know Penn State fans have got to be feeling good about making the college football playoff. I want to hear from you in the comment section. What does this team got to do to make the college football playoff and or win a Big Ten championship this year? Thank you all so much for watching. We're going to go into our last segment here with the Oregon Ducks schedule look-aheads. Thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate y'all. This has been a fun show today. I've had a good time. I've been wanting to talk some college football, man. I wanted to talk college football last week and just couldn't do it. I had too many responsibilities going on. So glad we could make it happen this week. Let's remove that and let's get set up here first. Mason, we are talking Oregon Ducks football. All you Oregon Ducks fans, hey, how you doing? Welcome to the 1st&LONG college football show. I'm Marcus. That's Mason. We are talking some Ducks football today, and we're so happy that you're here. Oregon Ducks came off an awesome year last year, Mason. We're gonna put some stats up here on the screen here. So that way we can kind of take a look at this stuff. Mason, can you take that banner down? I'm sorry.
I got it.
I just went full screen, so I can't do it. Look, this was a great season, as I said, for Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks last year. You get some continuity, I feel like, this year, returning both of the coordinators, Will Stein and Lapoy coming back on the offensive and defensive coordinator roles, respectively, there. Oregon moving over to the Big Ten, it's going to be a bit of a clash of cultures, I feel like, and I'm super excited to see how that turns out. Going to have a lot of Eastern teams headed out west, and in Oregon's case, a Western team headed out way east, and some cold weather atmospheres, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch as the season goes on. But look, nobody's been more entertaining this offseason, I feel like, than the Oregon Ducks. I feel like that nobody's really made a splash quite like the Oregon Ducks have, especially in the transfer portal, but not limited to the transfer portal. Great recruiting going on as well, but the acquisition of Jabbar Muhammad, and there were some Oregon fans who were a little concerned he didn't show up to those first couple of spring practices. I have gotten word that Evan Stewart and Jabbar Muhammad are now on campus and practicing. That's great news. Evan Stewart, as we just said, wide receiver from Texas A&M, 5-star guy, could start on any team in the country. Okay, this is a very talented guy. Super excited to see him as well. Cam Alexander come into play in the secondary on this defense. Mason, is there a spot on this Oregon Ducks team that looks to be deficient to you? I don't really see any spot. Last year, my biggest concern was the defensive line, and particularly the interior of the defensive line. It didn't seem like Oregon had that refrigerator shaped man to hold blocks off the linebackers in certain situations. I thought Washington did a good job of taking advantage of that, and I think that was really one of the very few chinks in the armor that Oregon had, as they took 2 losses to the Washington Huskies last year and went on to absolutely trounce Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. What's your thoughts on this Oregon Ducks team? I'm very excited to watch them play again this year, and I think Dan Lanning has got this team on the right track. He's even went as far as to say that in some cases they are a well-oiled machine right now in spring. Those are actual words from the coach's mouth. So Dan Lanning seems to be exuding some confidence to me that I feel like he would not be exuding if he didn't have a good reason to do so.
Yeah, I think as they enter the Big Ten and step up in competition, even as good as the Pac-12 was last year, this is a different conference. They're going to step in and immediately be contenders. I think that this team is poised. You mentioned it. You asked if there are any holes in this roster, and for the starting 22, no, there aren't. There really aren't. Maybe the kicker. Maybe you look at kicker again, which they brought in a transfer kicker as well. I know that was an issue last year for them.
Yes, it was.
They bring in a transfer kicker. Anxious to see how that turns out. It could go good or bad. You never know. But no, I mean, on offense and defense, I think that they are a very complete team. I'm anxious to see kind of how this all unfolds. One thing that's interesting though is this secondary. All right, on these 5 positions, you've got a transfer player in Cam Alexander at cornerback, transfer player in Kobe Savage at safety, a transfer player in Jabbar Muhammad, which you mentioned at cornerback, and a transfer player in Brandon Johnson at nickelback. And then also the guy that I think is going to end up being the free safety the strong safety is Aaron Flowers, who's going to be a true freshman, a very talented true freshman. But my point in saying this is you've got the potential to have 5 brand new starters on at the defensive backfield positions, and that has to be a little bit of a concern. Not having all these guys coming in from other programs, not having played together. Can you get them all on the same page? Because that cohesion is very important on that back end. And can they understand the defense, right? They're the ones who are the eyes and ears. The good thing is all of the transfer players are all seniors, so they've seen a lot of football. But they're the ones who are communicating up front to the linebackers and to the defensive line. So can they all get on the same page so they know what they're doing? By the end of the year, I think they will. But maybe you're looking at a few games early and wondering, if they're going to be on the same page or not. I think the schedule sets up for them pretty nicely. Looking at this, I wonder how that Oregon State game is going to look. I wonder how the Oregon State team is going to look after they lose Jonathan Smith to Michigan State. I don't know that this is as tough of a Oregon State team as we saw last year. I highly doubt that it is. UCLA, I think that they're going to be in a big transition year. By the way, Dante Moore left UCLA, comes to Oregon. So, who kind of fills his spot right at UCLA? I just don't think there's that much of a roster left there at UCLA. And then the team we just talked about, Michigan State, they're in a rebuilding year. So I don't think we're going to expect much from them, especially on October 5th of this year. And then you got the big boy, Ohio State. Everybody stop what you're doing on October 12th and go watch this game, please, because this is going to be an absolute heavyweight fight. This is going to be a heavyweight bout, and I'm really excited to see what comes of this, right? Because this is going to give us a really good idea of where Oregon stands in the Big Ten and where Dan Lanning is as a coach, where Ryan Day is as a coach, right? He's got the hottest seat in college football right now. Ryan Day does, not because he's a bad coach, but because he's put a lot of pressure on himself based on what they've done in the transfer portal and recruiting. It's a warranted hot seat, I think, for Ryan Day. So can Ryan Day compete with Dan Lanning? I would like to think, based on the roster, that they should be able to. But the other question for Dan Lanning is, can he win the big game against a really good coach? Because we saw him fall twice against Kalen DeBoer last year, and really in his career so far, he's made some poor coaching decisions and really got outcoached in a lot of their losses. So I think it's fair to say to question if he's getting better as a head coach, right? I think he is. I really like Dan Lanning as a head coach. Excellent recruiter, and I think that he is going to get better. But at this point, on October 12th of this year, we're going to see how much better he's gotten as a head coach, because those are the games where those decisions really matter. Those in-game decisions from the head coach, from the players, from everybody, they've got to be really sound to win those big games. Then you got Purdue, Illinois, a rebuilding Michigan team. Maryland might be pretty good still. Wisconsin, I think, will be pretty good. And Washington, I think 10.5 points is too low. I don't see a way that Oregon loses more than 2 games or more than 1 game in this regular season. I think Ohio State's the only one that can really get up and get them. I'm really high on Oregon this year. I was last year too. I thought that they were going to win the Pac-12 last year, but Washington had a really good team, and a lot of I think what we're going to see is really good first-round type talent for the NFL, and sometimes that just happens. But this is the year I think that Oregon comes in and makes a statement in the Big Ten, and I'm anxious to see it. I'm anxious to hear what Oregon fans think of their program. How bullish are you on your team this year? I know you step up in competition in a new conference, but what does that really mean to you, right? So let me know in the comment section kind of how you're feeling about this upcoming year.
This is I think a manageable schedule for the most part. I mean, you get your hardest game at home. That Wisconsin game, November 16th really sticks out to me. You got to go to Madison in November. I think it's going to be a little bit of a shock for some of those guys that it's going to be mighty cold. And make no mistake about it, the Luke Fickell train has left the station, buddy. And there will be a packed house there to witness that one for sure. But a lot of these other ones seem, very manageable. Oregon State was competing with teams they had no business competing against last year. Jonathan Smith had that team competing at a level that they probably had no business competing at. And I think that we'll see over time that Jonathan Smith is the right guy at Michigan State. But Michigan State's not going to be good this year. They're not going to be very good this year. Ohio State is going to be very good. UCLA, not very good. Boise State, we'll see, not great. They're not going to be a great team. Illinois, win at Purdue, I think could be a little bit trickier than what people realize. Coming off of a game against Ohio State, if there's a trap game on the schedule, Mason, it's at Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't realize the traction that Purdue had gotten this past offseason. And we're going to be talking about them a little bit more as the offseason goes on. I know there's probably no Boilermakers watching now, but just you heard it here first. Purdue has been picking up talent, people's leftovers, and they're going to have a decent little team, I think, this year and the next couple of years. Washington's going to be down this year. Michigan, I think, is going to be down this year. So that things are manageable. I don't even think we mentioned Dylan Gabriel coming over to play quarterback. I think you see kind of like a Bo Nix situation. I think you're gonna see. I don't know that he'll have the same numbers or better than Bo Nix from last year, but I think that it's going to be comparable. And I don't think that it's going to be all on his shoulders either. There's going to be a lot of options on this offense to propel this team, and I think the outlook is really, really bright for the Oregon Ducks. Let us know in the comment section what you think about your Ducks. What's your prediction for the year? Wins, losses, all that good stuff. We'd love to hear it. We love conversing with you guys and appreciate you guys watching the channel. I know there's Oregon Ducks that are definitely subscribed and will probably be watching later today, considering they're about 4 hours behind us here over on the East Coast. Thank you all so much for watching. And all of you guys that are watching live or have tuned in or watching this later, thank you so much. We have reached over 500 subscribers, guys, and that is because of people like you. And we are super, super excited about that. We're going to be able to take super chats here pretty soon. That's cool. We're looking at maybe making some membership options for you guys. And we're going to do our best to be creative and come up with some fun ideas, and we're open to your suggestions as well in the comment section. And as always, spread the word. Mason, you got anything else to close out the show today?
No, I think that's it. I will say, since I didn't talk about Dylan Gabriel, I do think that he's a better quarterback than Bo Nix and is poised to have a really good year. I think that I think we're going to see if he has a similar effect, a similar come up that Bo Nix had. This is a Heisman contender for sure.
Yeah. Sky's the limit for the Oregon Ducks, and I'm a big Dan Lanning believer. I think he will make better decisions this year as a coach. He will grow, and I think Oregon is a force to be reckoned with as they enter the Big Ten. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the 1st&LONG College Football Show. That's going to be it for today. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button for the video. We certainly do appreciate it. It helps us out with the algo. And there's Mason's bubble thumb. And that's going to be it for us today. I hope everybody has a great evening, and we will see you again next week. Don't forget to come tune in. We'll either be on Wednesday or Thursday. You got to be subscribed. That way you know whenever we go live. Thank you all so much for watching. Mason, have a good night, buddy, and we will talk to you all soon.
Thanks. Y'all have a good night.